What's up, guys? Welcome back to MMA Prophecies, where I bring you UFC and MMA news every week. Hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated. But right now, I'm going to give you guys my reaction to Dana White storming off of Howie Mandel's podcast. So apparently, Dana White was supposed to be a guest on Howie Mandel's podcast. Howie Mandel does stuff. And before this, I never even knew he had a podcast. But he hosts it with his daughter, and let me read what the description says, because I think it'll give us an idea of what really happened here, you guys. Welcome to the most quick-witted and inappropriate podcast of all time, hosted by comedian Howie Mandel and his co-host and daughter Jacqueline Schultz. Together, these two make prank calls, discuss pop culture, interview interesting people, say weird things, chat with listeners, da-da-da-da-da. All right, you guys. So just highlight the words prank calls and interview interesting people. With the way Howie introduced Dana, what you guys are about to see, it's pretty obvious that this was all a setup, because he makes it sound like he's admiring and wanting him to come onto his podcast for a while. But I'm going to roll the clip, and you guys can be the judge on whether this was scripted or not.
Dana White, you are an amazing guy. I can't thank you enough for being here. You and Ginger seem to be getting along. You are not only an amazing businessman, you are an inspiration, you are a philosopher. The way you do business, the way you conduct your business and your friendships and media is, I'm jealous. But Dana, I can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you for all the kind words. I appreciate it. I am so fucking tired of doing podcasts. I'm literally done with them. I'm not doing any more podcasts.
We have an illustrious guest.
Now, I'm going to go over all the tells as to why this was staged. I'm pretty sure everyone else thinks so too. But as soon as Howie starts complimenting Dana, Dana just immediately looks like he's acting like genuinely annoyed, which would make no sense because he's the one that agreed to come on to the podcast, and they haven't even talked about anything yet. But guys, it's so obvious that Howie is purposely acting like he's sucking up to Dana. He says, quote unquote, "Dana White, you are an amazing guy." I mean, who says that? Who calls people like amazing guys? That is literally the first time I've ever heard that being said on a podcast. You don't hear Joe Rogan saying that to anyone. You're an amazing guy. But that's the first tell. The second tell is when Howie says, "You and Ginger seem to be getting along," right? It's so obvious that Ginger is acting like he's uncomfortable. This is pretty obvious that it's kind of scripted at this point. I mean, that is not how people act comfortable in real life, right? Did you guys see that? You don't smile like that if you're feeling, uncomfortable. And then when Howie calls him an amazing businessman, Dana White looks like he hates what he's saying, as if he's saying the worst things about his career. And then he goes on to say, "The way you conduct your media and friends, I'm jealous." Jealous? What is he even saying right now? At this point, the act has already become so cringy. And then immediately Dana goes on to say that he's so effing sick of doing podcasts. "I'm literally done with them. I'm not doing any more podcasts." And then gently puts the mic aside and walks away. Right? And then conveniently the mic cuts to Howie and then Ginger, who still has that stupid, uncomfortable, hilarious grin on his face, and then cuts back to Howie and his daughter, who's putting her phone away and is like, what is going on here? Okay, so the majority of that was kind of hard to watch, especially at the beginning, but the very last part was the only well scripted part in my opinion, because just their reactions were all pretty funny. But why in the world would Dana White go on Howie Mandel's podcast? I'm pretty sure he doesn't know much about MMA or even has any MMA fighters on there. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that this was purely a stunt to try and get a certain type of viewer to start watching. And that certain type of viewer may be a fan of Dana White and the UFC. I don't know, guys. But, is Howie going to start talking more about the UFC now? Who knows? That's the only reason I can see why I pulled this stunt. But I'm sure it worked because I'm sure a ton of people went on his channel to look for the video and started tuning in. I think in the past hour, he got 4,000 subscribers. I personally have never watched any of Howie Mandel's stuff. It's just not my style because I grew up watching comedians like Will Ferrell and other guys from the old SNL. Will Smith on Fresh Prince was amazing. The old Simpsons was, spectacular. And Howie's type of comedy was always just too mild, and it's always been more suitable for families. But I'm sure they paid Dana a hefty chunk to go on and do that. But you know what? I don't think Dana White is done with podcasts. I think he does enjoy going on them because we saw him with the Nelk Boys, Theo Von, Vivek Ramaswamy, Gary Brecka. So he obviously likes doing them. And you can tell by watching him. But it'll be funny to see how Dana plays this off, and I'm sure a ton of media's members will be asking about it during the UFC weekend. So I'm sure that's going to get a bunch of publicity. But guys, if this was real, I think it would be pretty hilarious and make sense because what in the world would he talk about on Howie Mandel's channel? Possibly he was sending a message to all the podcasts who don't know anything about MMA or related, that he's only going to go on channels that are either MMA fans or in some way related through health and fitness and sports. But one podcast I would love to see him be a part of again is Joe Rogan's. He hasn't gone on that podcast since 2013, and obviously they're good friends, and they both exploded throughout the UFC's popularity, and they have a great relationship. Obviously, this is what Dana says about Joe. He says, "Me and Rogan, we have a great relationship. Obviously, the UFC has blown up and grown since we started together, but we couldn't have a better relationship. He does this thing and he kills it for us. I think he's the best ever." Right? So if you guys want a link to some of the old Joe Rogan and Dana White clips, he actually tells a crazy story about him getting jumped in a bar, getting hit in the ear thousands of times, and then getting Meniere's disease. But yeah, you guys, Dana White has been doing podcasts for a long time and he's not going to stop, so don't worry. That's basically all he does. He talks to the media or other famous people and just talks about his life. It's the easiest job. But guys, that is my take on Dana White storming out on Howie Mandel's podcast. If you guys like this video, hit that like and subscribe button for weekly UFC and MMA content. And until the next one, peace out, you guys.